हरे कृष्णा। आप सभी दर्शकों का बहुत बहुत स्वागत है आपके पसंदीदा शो एक मुलाकात कृष्ण भक्त के साथ के बिल्कुल नई कड़ी में। जो लोग आज हमारे साथ पहली बार जुड़ रहे हैं, हो सकता है आपने थंबनेल देख करके, टाइटल पढ़ करके या पोस्टर बैनर देख करके बड़ी बहुत सारी जिज्ञासा के साथ आज हमारे चैनल को क्लिक किया है। और यकीन मानिए, अगर आप आज के 1-1.5 घंटे हमारे साथ डट करके जुड़े रहते हैं तो काफी सारी नई बातें आपको आज स्वयं के बारे में जानने को मिल सकती हैं, अपने धर्म के बारे में जानने को मिल सकती हैं, कृष्ण भावनामृत के बारे में जानने को मिल सकती है। वैसे तो हरे कृष्ण टीवी के यूट्यूब चैनल पर हम मंडे यानी सोमवार को छोड़ करके हफ्ते के बाकी सारे 6 दिन आपकी सेवाओं में लाइव शोज को ऑर्गेनाइज करते हैं और पूरी दुनिया भर से ऐसे दिग्गज लोगों को हमारे बीच आमंत्रित करते हैं जो अपने भौतिक जीवन के साथ साथ अपने आध्यात्मिक जीवन में भी कई सारी ऊंचाइयों तक पहुंचे हुए हैं। कुछ ऐसे लोग जो अपने परिवार को साथ में लेकर चलते हुए समाज में एक बेहतर बदलाव लाने का प्रयास कर रहे हैं, स्वयं के आचरण, स्वयं के जीवन से आसपास के लोगों को भगवान कृष्ण के समीप ले जाने का प्रयास कर रहे हैं और कहीं ना कहीं अपने अस्तित्व से, अपने एग्जिस्टेंस से इस समाज को, इस सोसाइटी को एक बेहतर जगह बनाने की अपना योगदान दे रहे हैं। आमतौर पर कहूं तो ये कुछ ऐसे लोग हैं जिनके मरने के बाद दुनिया शोक मनाती है। दर्शकों, एक मुलाकात के इस प्लेटफॉर्म पर हम पूरी दुनिया से ऐसे भक्तों को लेकर के आते हैं जिनका जीवन अपने आप में बहुत ही ज्यादा रोचक रहा है। कुछ ऐसे भक्त जिन्होंने अपने जीवन में कई सारी चीजों का सामना किया, कई सारे लोगों से उनकी मुलाकात हुई, लेकिन अंततः न जाने क्यों वो सुकून जिनकी तलाश वो बचपन से कर रहे थे, वो कहीं ना कहीं उन्हें भगवान कृष्ण तक लेकर आई। इसी सिलसिले में हमने आज के हमारे इस प्लेटफॉर्म पर कई सारे भक्तों को इंटरव्यू किया है, उनके जीवन को समझा है, उन्होंने अपने जीवन से जो समझा है वो समझने का प्रयास किया है। और इसी कड़ी में आज हमारे जो गेस्ट हैं वे अपने आप में बहुत ही ज्यादा यूनिक, बहुत ही ज्यादा पावरफुल और कहीं ना कहीं बहुत ही ज्यादा नॉन स्टीरियोटिपिकल हैं। सबसे पहली बात आपको ये बता दूं कि आज के हमारे गेस्ट हिंदी नहीं बोलते, वे एक पूर्ण रूप से अंग्रेजी इंग्लिश मैन है और मैं उनसे इंग्लिश में ही बात करूंगी, लेकिन मैं अपना पूरा प्रयास करूंगी कि मैं हमारी बातचीत को आप तक हिंदी में पहुंचा सकूं। हो सकता है सेशन के बीच में आपको थोड़ा डिस्कनेक्टेड फील हो, लेकिन प्लीज आप हमारे साथ बने रहिएगा। मेरे प्रश्नों के बाद आपको हमारे गेस्ट से प्रश्न पूछने का अवसर मिलेगा। आप यदि चाहें तो आप हिंदी में प्रश्न पूछ सकते हैं, मैं हमारे गेस्ट के लिए उसे ट्रांसलेट कर दूंगी और गेस्ट के आंसर को भी ट्रांसलेट कर दूंगी। चलिए बिना अधिक समय गवाए आज के हमारे गेस्ट को मैं आप सब तक उनके कुछ इंट्रोडक्शन को पहुंचाने का प्रयास करती हूं। तो आज के हमारे अतिथि का नाम है महिमा वर्णदास। आज के हमारे गेस्ट जो हैं उनका जन्म सोमालिया में हुआ और 2000 ये जो दशक है 2000, उसके शुरुआती दशक में वे लंदन शिफ्ट हो गए। और आज के हमारे जो गेस्ट हैं उन्होंने कई सारे फेथ्स को, कई सारी श्रद्धाओं को, कई सारे आध्यात्मिक मार्गों को, धार्मिक मार्गों का उन्होंने बहुत सारा दौरा किया और 2019 में उनका जो रुझान है वो कृष्णा कॉन्शियसनेस यानी कृष्ण भावनामृत संघ के प्रति बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ गया और उन्होंने फाइनली सनातन धर्म को कृष्णा कॉन्शियसनेस के तहत स्वीकार कर लिया। और जब से वह भक्ति में जुड़े हैं तब से वे बहुत ही ज्यादा एक्टिवली भगवान के इस नाम का प्रचार कर रहे हैं, कॉर्पोरेट आउटरीच प्रोग्राम्स में है और कहीं ना कहीं इंटरफेथ इनिशिएटिव्स में उनका बहुत बड़ा योगदान रहा है। अब कहीं ना कहीं मेरे एक्सपीरियंस में ये बहुत ही नया वर्ड है, तो पहला सवाल मैं अपने अतिथि को यही पूछने वाली हूँ। आज के जो हमारे गेस्ट हैं उनका बैकग्राउंड है बिजनेस एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन और क्रिएटिव मीडिया में और उन्होंने इससे पहले कई बार कोचिंग में काम किया है, मेंटोरिंग बैचेस में काम किया है और कहीं ना कहीं वे अपने जीवन के एक गहरे अस्तित्व, गहरे अर्थ को खोजने की दिशा में बहुत रुचि लेकर के चल रहे हैं। साथ ही उन्होंने अपने जीवन के 3 वर्ष एक आश्रम में बिताया है, स्वयं को अच्छी तरह से जानने की कोशिश की है और आज की तारीख में वे इस्कॉन के तहत भक्ति का पूरा पूरा प्रचार और प्रयास कर रहे हैं। आज के जो हमारे गेस्ट हैं वे 2 बार श्रीधाम मायापुर का दौरा कर चुके हैं और लगभग पिछले 1 हफ्ते पहले ही वे दोबारा से लंदन अपने निवास पहुंचे हैं और आज की तारीख में वे अपनी बुक फाइंडिंग योर इनर वॉरियर इस पर काम कर रहे हैं। काफी ज्यादा रोचक इनका बैकग्राउंड है, काफी ज्यादा इंटरेस्टिंग इनका कॉन्टेक्स्ट है। आइए बिना अधिक समय गवाए महिमा वर्ण प्रभु जी से जानते हैं कि कैसी रही है उनकी ये जर्नी। Hare Krishna, Mahima Varnaji. Thank you so much for joining.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much for having me.
Before we start our interview, Prabhuji, I would like to ask you a simple question. Before you joined us on the set here, I was introducing yourself. So how much have you understood about yourself from the introduction I gave?
I've understood everything from
I mean,
introduction.
it's such a nice thing to hear. So that means you're quite very fluent in Hindi.
No, what I was doing was I was just kind of picking up a little bit on the few English words that you use. That just kind of helped me to understand what you've covered.
Interesting. So, Prabhuji, on this platform, what we do is we try to understand from the devotees how has their journey been so far. What is it that made them pursue Krishna consciousness? What is it that helps them keep going? And how do they convince others to pursue this path? And in your case, especially, one term that slightly outstruck me was interfaith initiatives. Could you
Mhm.
explain what this means?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that question. Interfaith. So the reason and the purpose behind that is ultimately when we open the Bhagavad Gita, the first thing that starts off is that we're not the body, but we're a soul. But simultaneously, particularly in my own personal journey, is that we struggle with a lot of things from the past. So it's not that we have completely come to the platform of realizing that we're a spiritual being. We identify so much with our body. We identify so much with our past religious conditions. We identify with so many things that then holds us back from being able to completely surrender ourselves to Krishna. So for me, the reason why this whole kind of initiative of opening conversations and dialogues where we can have discussions and conversations with other people is because, first of all, it helps us to come to an acceptance of perhaps maybe the journey that we came from. But simultaneously, we live in a world today where everybody is trying to superior themselves to others. Many people, not everyone, but many people. You know, my faith is the right faith, my path is the right path, my religion is the right religion. And the consequence of that you find and see in today's world is that it is increasing violence, conflict, tension. And so, where there can be an opportunity for a dialogue, a communication where we can interact and we can appreciate similarities, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentioned, that you see, you know, whether I go to a mosque or a temple, I see that someone else is praying to the same Krishna, same Lord that I am. Just because their rituals may be different, just because their process may be different, it doesn't disqualify them. So when we can come together and we can have dialogues and conversation, then what happens is then we can find cooperation, a way to come closer to Krishna, whatever that person may also call Krishna, whether it's Allah, Jehovah, whatever the case may be. This was Srila Prabhupada's vision that we need to encourage people to chant God's name. So that's really the mission, is creating an atmosphere and an environment in where we can have these kind of conversations without feeling guilty, without feeling shame, without feeling judged, and where we can deepen our relationship with the holy name, whatever that holy name may actually be for that particular individual.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for joining your wonderful insight on this such a delicate and sensitive topic. I'm sure the world needs more people like you. What you said just now advocates the principle of inclusivity, and somewhere or the other, the very important point that you highlighted is that we identify with our bodies, and this is what holds us back from being our true selves. I'll just translate this for our audience,
Mm,
which is majority Hindi speaking. सो दर्शकों, जब मैंने आज के हमारे अतिथि से पूछा कि निश्चित रूप से इंटरफेथ एक्टिविटीज का मतलब क्या है, इंटरफेथ इनिशिएटिव्स का मतलब क्या है, तो उन्होंने यही बताया कि भगवत गीता को जब हम पढ़ने का प्रयास करते हैं तो सबसे पहली शिक्षा ही ये दी जाती है कि हम ये शरीर नहीं अपितु आत्मा है। लेकिन ये पढ़ने और जानने के बावजूद हम इस चीज को मान नहीं पाते। और क्यों नहीं मान पाते? क्योंकि हम अब भी अपने आप को अपने इस शरीर से संबोधित करते हैं, अपने धर्म से संबोधित करते हैं, अपने जाति वर्ण और कहीं ना कहीं अपने परिवार के साथ संबोधित करते हैं। और जब हम एक ऐसे समाज में रह रहे हैं जब अन्य धर्म के लोग भी उसी समाज में रहते हुए अपने धर्म के अनुसार अपने भगवान की इबादत कर रहे हैं, तो हमारे लिए ये बहुत ज़रूरी है कि हम एक-दूसरे के साथ मिल कर के इस बात को समझें कि कहीं न कहीं हम सभी एक ही ईश्वर की प्रार्थना कर रहे हैं, अपितु अलग नाम से और अलग पद्धति से। महिमा वर्णा जी, थैंक यू सो मच गेटिंग बैक टू योर लाइफ. Could you please take our audiences back in the days in the region of Somalia and talk to us about something related to your family?
Tell you something related to my family. Is that sorry? Okay. So I was brought up in Somalia in 1995. This was during the time of the Civil War. I do not recollect so much memories because during that period of time, there was huge conflict and there was a huge turmoil in Somalia. So after some few months, we migrated and we were traveling around different parts of East Africa. So I don't really recollect so much of memories growing up as a child. But I spent a lot of my time going to Arabic classes where I would learn the Quran, I would learn Arabic, I would learn about culture, tradition, many different things. So therefore, I'm really grateful because growing up, I was already deeply rooted in my spiritual practice and in my spiritual faith that really kind of shaped who I am today. But simultaneously, at the same time, traveling between so many different countries means that I had a very sort of a difficult concept and idea of who I was. Because you see, we're very much shaped and we're very much influenced by our environment. So from places to places, I would make different friends, different like school, different like just very different. So growing up, I wasn't really quite sure of who I was and who I was supposed to be. My entire life, you can say, to a great length, was shaped very much by the expectations of my family and the people around me. And then about the early 20s, so we were migrating a lot. And then during that period of time, I had a couple of siblings, come into this world. But then in the early 20s, we finally migrated to the UK, to London. And then I was around 5, 6 years old. And that in itself brought about a lot of new sets of challenges when it came to identity, when it came to religion, when it came to purpose. And so, yeah, I don't really recall so much of my sort of growing up in Somali. But also, I feel very fortunate. I feel very, very grateful and very fortunate. It is, you can say, God or Krishna's blessings that I'm still here because I remember that one story that my mom was telling me was that during that time of the Civil War, there was a stray bullet that could have nearly hit me, but luckily I'm alive and I missed that. So it's Krishna's grace that I'm still here today.
Thank you so much for sharing, Mahima Varnaji. It's indeed a very fortunate thing to know that you've been saved from a real life experience that could have resulted in a very fatal thing. But one thing that you said is really true, that when children grow up in families or in environments where they have to constantly travel from one place to another, they have a very difficult time trying to understand themselves. But as you rightly mentioned, that when you were migrating as a family, you were practicing a certain path. Okay, maybe you call it a spiritual path or a religious path, and you told us that you were very culturally rooted. That means, so does that mean only you as an individual was practicing, or was it your family?
My family were practicing, but I had with all love and respect, I really kind of, I got it from my parents because they were also very deeply rooted in their spiritual practice. But I would say the thing with my personal journey was that there was a great depth of intensity. For some reason or another, growing up, I really, really wanted to connect with God. I really wanted to understand God. I wanted to understand the purpose of life. While so many of my peers were sort of growing up and, we were all having a laugh externally, but internally, I felt a yearning. I felt like there was something missing in my life. And so, therefore, I just couldn't live according to how other young people would live. For instance, I used to meditate on death a lot growing up. For instance, I always used to wonder and think that, you know, there must be more to this. There must be more to life than just what I'm experiencing now. So I lost a lot of interest in family very early in my age, realizing that, you know, like, this is not eternal. This is not my permanent residence. I felt like that. Sometimes I used to just close my eyes and dream of a different world. Um, and so, yeah, it was like I just could not resonate with the same kind of things that other young people would do. And that kind of made me very open to bullying. I was bullied a lot growing up because of just how I was, because of just how I behaved. People just thought I was weird, I was abnormal. But at the same time, for me, it was like, even though externally I was feeling the pain, internally I used to feel like, yeah, there must be more to my life. And so those questions kind of really intensified my spiritual journey. I remember once I was embracing my brother. I have a brother. I was embracing my brother. And then suddenly this realization hit me that this relationship, this exchange is temporary. I'm not going to be with him forever, and he's not going to be with me forever. So where are we both going? Where is he going, and where am I going? So scenarios like that used to make me think a lot about life and the afterlife.
These are thoughts, these are things that generally don't bother people. These are areas of life that people don't generally think about. Ideally, when a man or a woman is grown up, they think about getting married, they get married, and then they produce children, and they work very hard to give their children an ideal life. But the kind of thoughts that you've been sharing very, very honestly is something that the general public is not really bothered about. But since you were bothered about them, and since you actively thought and meditated on these things, is the reason why you're here. Tell us about the lack of satisfaction that you felt at that time. And since you are also telling us that you were an easy target for bullying in those days, did you open up to your parents about this? Did you ever try telling them that this place that you're in right now is not where you think you should have been?
Hmm. I don't recall who spoke this quote, but there was a quote that goes along the line that if I cannot find anything in this world that can't satisfy me, that can't fulfill me, that can't bring me happiness, then it must mean that I'm not from this world, but I'm from another world. So for me, it was like I felt a very deep level of dissatisfaction, whether it was trying to pursue a certain goal in education, you know, like going through high school, college, or whether it was searching and exploring for ways to make more money, you know, to get into entrepreneurial journey, whether it was meeting people that were very successful in their life. For me, none of them really attracted me. I just felt like there is an end to all this to some degree in this world that we're living in today. You know, how much will learning more and more and more fulfill me? How much will making more money fulfill me? All these people that I'm seeing, they have everything, but they want to multiply their success. They want to multiply their possession. But yet I can just see staring into them, I can see just staring at them, they're not as fulfilled as they're attempting to make me believe they are. So I just couldn't buy into that. And for me, I just felt like, you know, like I felt dissatisfaction. So then, therefore, after a while, I started to realize that this dissatisfaction that I'm feeling, it must be because I'm looking at the wrong places. I'm exploring and I'm searching in the wrong places. And what had happened was that I must confess there was a period of time where I was very negligent towards this voice. And so then, therefore, I winded up on a journey of being surrounded by the wrong people, doing the wrong activities, and so many things that nearly costed me my life again while I was in the UK. So for me, it was to that point where I started to notice that so many people my age were involved in gang, in violence, in drugs. Some of them would end up in prison, others would end up dead. And I thought to myself, is this what I want to do? Is this the sort of voice I want to listen to? And luckily for me, I was just like, no, So then that's when I just said completely like, okay, enough is enough of this, and I'm just going to go fully straight into my spiritual journey and my spiritual life. And not only will I go into my spiritual journey in my spiritual life, but how can I contribute? That was like really, I think one thing that really helped me growing up was I was always focused on how I can help others. How can I contribute? How can I serve? And how can I make the world around me a little bit better than what it is? So there was and then bullying shaped my resilience. I would say that bullying really made me go deeper. So now that's why nowadays when people ask me which country you're from or what religion did you practice in the past, for me, it doesn't bother me anymore as much as it used to bother me, because people used to pick on this so much that I used to think that, like there must be a lot more to it. So it made me go deeper into my spiritual kind of side, bullying. Of course, I got affected. I cried a lot. It did hurt, but through that pain, I was able to find purpose. Through that pain, it fueled me. It made me think that I don't want to be succumbed and subdued to my labels. I don't want my parents telling me who I should be, what I should be. I don't want other students telling me how I should act and how I should live my life. And I don't want teachers to define what my future will look like. So for me, all those noises just became a background. And then I started journaling a lot. I started reflecting a lot. I started reading a lot. And then through that, eventually Krishna guided me to where I am today. Srila Prabhupada guided me to where I am today.
Right. So far it's been very interesting, Mahimarnava Broji. It's been very, very interesting. It's just, it feels like we're reaching the climax of the show, since you already mentioned Srila Prabhupada and Lord Shri Krishna. Could you please tell us what kind of books were you reading in that time to cope up with everything that was going on in and around?
I was reading a book. So I was, during that time, what I used to do was I used to close myself in my room. So I was a very much a loner. Growing up, I really struggled to make friends because I just couldn't resonate with people and connect with people. But also, I had a very low self-worth and low self-confidence. So I would spend vast majority of my time in my own room, and I would just go on YouTube. I would listen to different lectures by different individuals that claim to be spiritual. And I would read different books. I read books like Buddhist books. I read a book by someone called Alice Bailey. Read books by individual called Robert Greene. Just so many variety of books about philosophy. I think one of them is called The Law of Attraction. So that was another book that I read. So many variety of books that I read, but it just kind of felt like the more I was reading, the more confused I felt. It was just like, the more confused I felt, the more I just felt like, okay, I feel even further away from understanding myself. So then eventually, I started studying a lot more into the Bible. I would go to, one thing that I didn't share was that when I decided to leave home, I ended up homeless for 3 years in London. And then during that time, at some point, I found a church in central London. And then I used to go to this church. And then I used to just listen to the priest talk. And then I started taking a little bit interest in the Bible. But I just felt like, the spirit that I was looking for, I couldn't find it. Sometimes what it is that people would just kind of act in erratic way. And then that just kind of made me doubt the authenticity of not of the religion itself or the practice itself, but of the people. So yeah, I've read so many different kind of books. I would kind of write down my notes of what I thought. For me, Christianity was very interesting and it's very beautiful. Prabhupada always says that actually when someone follows the Bible or the Quran or whatever it is that they're studying properly, then they can actually ultimately reach God consciousness, love of God. So that was for me interesting reading. And then I started reading the Quran again after a while, because when I was growing up, I was reading it because others told me to read it. But now it was like I wanted to kind of go through it again and try and understand it. So yeah, so many different books I read. And then one thing that I really noticed was ultimately all these books, they were really trying to depict the same thing, that there is something missing in our life. Unfortunately, most self-development book, they try and tell you that you're missing money in your life, you're missing relationship in your life, you're missing so many different things in your life, but with the Bible, the Quran, the Gita, you're missing something in your life, and the only way to really understand what it is, that thing that you're missing in your life, is connect with God.
Right. That's so true. That's so true. And I feel like everything that you've been sharing with us today is something that most of us feel. Everybody who's been practicing spirituality very, very seriously has been feeling this void in their heart for a very long time. And in order to look for something that fills the void deep within the heart, is how they come to Krishna consciousness and then never look back. You made a very special point here, is that in the childhood days you were studying the Quran because your parents told you to, but right now you were studying it because you wanted to. So
Mm.
is it because you were slightly feeling guilty for practicing some other faith or maybe going to the church? Is there a guilt angle attached here?
There's no guilt angle. I don't personally feel like I'm obliged to study anything in particular because of guilt. But what it was more specifically was because I was brought up and raised to fear other religions. I was brought up and raised to, to kind of keep my distance from different practices, different processes, different scriptures. So, my mentor always tells me that we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. And so, because I was brought up with so much conditionings of fear, of bitterness, especially like, nowadays you see what's going on in the Middle East, you see what's going on in the world, where there's so much violence in the name of religion, in the name of fear, and people don't even understand why. So for me, I was kind of brought up in that kind of atmosphere, that intensity of atmosphere. When I was growing up in the UK, there was a lot of Islamophobia. There was a lot of people being attacked for their faith, for their practice, for their religion. And so my parents were very fearful, and they were mainly just trying to protect me. That kind of atmosphere, energy, and environment, when I was reading the Quran, I was reading it through the lenses of fear. Nowadays, what it is that, with so much support and assistance around me, I'm able to kind of really read the Quran without being emotionally swayed. That, oh, I should try and read it out of fear. So I can just read it, and I can try and just see it as it is. Just as they say Bhagavad Gita as it is, so I can just try and see the Quran as it is, and then from that onwards, just see what are the similarities, and how can I communicate that to the outside world. So it's not out of guilt; it's more actually out of inspiration.
So Mahima Varnaji, take us to the latter half of the story now. After you started reading the Quran again out of inspiration, and you were trying to figure out to establish a middle ground, trying to communicate it to the others. So were you able to finally find the satisfaction that had brought you here?
So after reading the Quran, was I able to find the satisfaction? Um, I I believe so. I believe so. Like, one of my most um, interesting fascination that I found when I was studying the Quran, yeah, is how it says that there's no compulsion to follow a religion or to force a religion upon others. So for me, it's like it just kind of gives me hope that Allah, as we depict him, is not what I thought he was when I was growing up. He's not this personality that will judge you. Like, even though, many Muslims say this, but this is my deep understanding, and this is my deep processing of where I've come in my journey. But I've always kind of wondered, and I've always thought that God isn't going to judge you on the basis of your label, but rather God wants you to willingly and lovingly come to Him at wherever you're at. And so when I read passages like that, it gives me hope and faith that what people preach, and often what I understand, is separate. But I'm trying to understand things as they are, rather than the narrative that the news, people that are living in fear and violence, and people that are just around the world that are trying to sort of pressure me to believe or think. We can see that, I don't want to go too deep into it, but we can see that with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he spoke to the Panthans, and then he was sharing about bhakti, they resonated with it, and they connected with it, and then they took to the process of chanting. So I really truly feel like, yeah, like the Quran has given me affirmation and assurance that I can carry on living as I am. That I'm not bounded by the fear of hell or heaven. Because what it is that that is a reality and experience that we fear so much in the afterlife, but we're creating that same experience in this life. So yeah, I'm so grateful actually.
That's such a nice thing that दर्शकों, उम्मीद करती हूँ आप सभी हमारे साथ इस कॉन्वर्सेशन में जुड़े हुए हैं। अब तक हमने हमारे अतिथि से यही जानने का प्रयास किया है कि कैसे वे अपने पूरे परिवार के साथ अपने मुस्लिम धर्म को प्रैक्टिस कर रहे थे। उन्होंने कहा वे बहुत दृढ़ता के साथ अपने धर्म को प्रैक्टिस कर रहे थे, अच्छी तरह से समझना चाहते थे, लेकिन कहीं न कहीं उनके जीवन में एक असंतुष्टि थी और वे उस असंतुष्टि को भरने के लिए आम तौर पर अपने जीवन में यहाँ-वहाँ से कहीं न कहीं से किसी मार्गदर्शन का इंतज़ार कर रहे थे। कैन वी प्लीज़ हैव हिम बैक ऑन द लाइन प्लीज़? Hmm. So Mahima Varna ji, can you tell us about the first time you got in touch with maybe ISKCON devotees or somebody who was practicing something so wholly different known as Sanatan Dharma?
The first time that I met a devotee, you asked? Okay, before I go on to that, I just want to share something else, if that's okay.
Yeah, please, please.
My mentor always says here that actually it's nice when we can recite a scripture in its language. And I always feel inspired by this particular verse from the Quran, where basically Allah, God is saying that we should allow people to follow their own path without disturbing them from their path, and we should follow our path. Let them go their way and let us go our way. So it goes along the line of قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ لَا أَعْبُدُ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ وَلَا أَنْتُمْ عَابِدُونَ مَا أَعْبُدُ وَلَا أَنَا عَابِدٌ مَا عَبَدتُّمْ لَكُمْ دِينُكُمْ وَلِيَ دِينِ. And it's really beautiful because what it basically portrays, what it basically depicts is that where God is saying that, we should focus on our path, on carrying on our path, and those that want to believe in whatever they want to believe, we should also just let them carry on their path. And so it's really nice. So then therefore there really truly is no compulsion. There's no force, that we should actually live in peace with others and whatever they're practicing. But moving on to what you were asking. So you were asking me the first time that I met a devotee. That was 6 years ago. So I touched on slightly a little bit that when I chose to explore other different faiths, that meant that I was really struggling to kind of bond with my family, relatives, and friends. So I decided I chose to exit that whole life without any plan. It almost kind of feels like when Prabhupada went to America and he wasn't like sure how's things going to work out. And then when I decided to exit out of that life, I had no plan, so I ended up homeless for 3 years in London. In fact, I ended up homeless 3 years in London near Tottenham Court Road, and that's where one of our Soho temple is, Soho ISKCON temple. And then during that time, it was the roughest period where my faith was really being tested and challenged. Some days, some people were able to kind of let me stay places. Other days, I would sleep on the streets. It was just very rough. After those 3 years, I tried to rekindle my relationship with my family. But it was proven to be challenging. And then after a while, what happened was that one day I needed a break. I needed a break from just all the pressure, all the noises, all of the expectations. So I went to this park in central London called Battersea Park. And there I met a Hare Krishna devotee. It was just the most amazing thing, because I met the devotees about a year ago in another country, but I didn't make too much of it. This time I was in this park, and believe it or not, I was near Lord Buddha. There was a beautiful statue of Lord Buddha. And then I sat down, and then I was looking for somewhere to sit, couldn't find anywhere to sit. And then there was one devotee that was sitting there, and I thought, like, he doesn't look like he will interrupt me, so let me sit next to him. But they're very good at shattering your illusion. So then as I sat there, I was reading my book, minding my business, and then he started a conversation with me. And then he started asking me, what am I reading? What am I doing? Who am I? And then that entire conversation just became the most beautiful conversation about Bhakti Yoga. You see, when I was exploring so many different religions, often I would come across people that would tell me, you have to follow this path or you're going to go to hell. This was the first time I met someone who was basically sharing with me his faith without intimidating me or without, like trying to use God's fear or God's wrath against me. And I felt like this is so beautiful. It's so loving. What a nice conversation. After that 1 hour conversation, he took me to Soho Temple. And then that was the first time he engaged me in service. I went downstairs, I started cutting some vegetables for Food for Life. And then that's how the rest just naturally started flowing. It was so beautiful. He gave me the philosophy and the practicality rather than just the philosophy alone.
How things began flowing in your favor. Would I be wrong to say that?
It's interesting you say that because he said the same thing. Because what had happened was I was hungry for many days. And then after that, he told me, where were you homeless? And I said to him, Tottenham Court Road. And he was like, what? You were homeless in Tottenham Court Road? We have like our Food for Life project there. And then after that, I said to him, yeah, like I was just there, but I didn't know about Food for Life. I didn't know about ISKCON Temple, Soho Temple, anything like that. And then he said something so beautiful. What he said to me at that time was that perhaps maybe you weren't ready to learn of all this. If you had learned of all this then, perhaps maybe you would not have appreciated it as much as you appreciate it now. So I think everything worked in my favor, but not according to my time, but according to Krishna's timing.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. We had a slight technical error. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Did you hear all that, what I said?
Not really. Could
Okay,
I
that's
please
fine.
request you to come a little closer to the screen because I'm not able to really hear you,
Can
catch
you hear
you?
me now?
Yeah, clear.
Okay. So I was saying that earlier on when you said, yeah, that was it in my great fortune. Yeah, it's interesting because this devotee said the same thing when I was telling him that I was homeless in Tottenham Court Road. He said that, what? Like, Tottenham Court Road, you were homeless? That's like where we have our Food for Life project. That's where we have our Soho Temple. And I said to him, yeah, like for 3 years, I didn't know about Soho. I didn't know about Food for Life. And then what he said to me was so beautiful. Perhaps maybe it was not your time to learn of this. You would not have appreciated it as much then as you appreciate it now. So even though things did not happen according to my timing, it happened towards Krishna's timing. And so for me, it's like, yeah, definitely it happened as it was supposed to happen.
It's such a beautiful thing to know that you've been sharing all these details with us, which with so much joy, and maybe I can see that in your eyes. You previously mentioned that you tried to rekindle things with your family. You tried to get back to them, but it was not working out. It was slightly challenging. So after this incident that you got in touch with the devotees, that devotee gave you philosophy as well as practicality. Did you try getting in touch with your family after that incident?
I have many, many times. I think what it is that, I often have this dialogue and conversation with my mentor. And sometimes we try and use bhakti, we try and use spirituality to escape from responsibility and duty, spiritually bypassing. So for me, I tried many times to rekindle my relationship with my family, to try and remain in touch with them until like now I do. I'm in touch with them. We don't have the best of dialogue all the time, but at least they, like not they, but she, particularly my mom, is in touch with me. She sends voice notes. It's difficult, but yeah, I haven't completely cut that relationship, I would say, and I shouldn't.
Hmm. That's right. So you mentioned the word mentor here. Can you talk about the first time you met him and when was the point you realized that you need a mentor in life? And when was the point that you realized, yes, this is my mentor? See, one thing is I just tell you that so and so person is your mentor. And the another thing is that person
Mm.
exclusively doing something in your life, maybe contributing in such a way that you yourself understand that this person and his contributions in my life are way much important. So, how was that experience?
A mentor is someone that sees you for who you could and should become, and not just who you are. And so in my life, I kind of went through so many different teachers, but I never really did I really feel seen. Never really did I feel heard. And so, in fact, before I had met my mentor, and even during that time when I had met my mentor, um, I kind of have lost faith in teachers in general. When I was growing up, when I was growing up, often I would receive these comments from my teachers because I was really struggling in school. And these comments would be like, behave. It was heavy, I was really. It wasn't even just behave. It was just, I remember one teacher told me that if you carry on behaving the way you are behaving, then you're going to end up dead or in prison. And then even prior to that, even earlier than that, I remember when I used to go to Arabic classes where I would often be disciplined physically if I ever behaved. Like, I would receive whips or lashes. And so I knew I needed a teacher, but at the same time, I didn't really feel entirely comfortable giving myself to a teacher. And so then, therefore, I remember that when I came to the temple for the first time, I knew that what I was looking for was right, but I did not know who to guide me. I did not know who to kind of give me inspiration, who could give me love, and who could really genuinely support me. Then I remember that I did this, what was called a 7-day Be a Monk course. And then after the 7-day Be a Monk course, actually during the 7-day Be a Monk course, I was brought up into the ashram. And then when I was brought up into the ashram, I was being showed around the temple, around the ashram. And then they opened the library. And then as soon as they opened the library, there was S.P. Swami at the time, Sutapa Das, who was basically just sitting there, just like, really working hard on his writing. And as soon as he looked at me and then just smiled, I just felt like in that moment, I felt that there was something attractive about this person. It's similar to when, Prabhupada went to America. And then when Prabhupada went to America and he went to New York, and then there were all these hippies, when they saw Prabhupada, they felt like that this wasn't just a person that just wanted to elevate himself. This wasn't just a person who was just trying to make an advancement and progress for himself, but this was someone who truly and really cared, someone who truly and really deeply loved and was concerned. So even though we didn't speak so much when I first met him, even though we didn't speak so much when I first met him, I felt like as soon as I saw him, there was some level of care and love just from seeing him. And I felt attracted to that. And I felt like that was one thing that I really needed in my life because I was very much lacking a father figure in my life. I was very much lacking a father figure, someone that could really support me, love me, and care for me for who I was without judging. And but that was already also genuinely concerned about the welfare of me. So when I first met, and so for me, I just kind of felt like, yeah, I could really see that in him. And then ever since, like I really took to his guidance, his love, his care, and then trying to always keep his instructions at the forefront of my spiritual life. Believe in myself and really try and progress forward in life and try and serve selflessly.
Hmm. Mahimarnava Prabhuji, it's been 3 years. I'm sitting on this chair and interviewing people from all across the globe, and this has been my common experience that whenever devotees start talking about their first-hand experience with their mentor, or maybe with their Maharaj, the one person who has given them initiation, Harinam initiation, there's this common uh, experience of bliss that I see, that I witness on their eyes, on their face, and it's really, really very beautiful. It feels like we're all part of one family, and this is one common experience that everybody goes through. Now I want to ask you something that is very personal, and this is something that everybody answers differently in their own way. You told us very honestly and openly that you were on the streets of London for 3 long years, and then you took to Krishna consciousness gradually, eventually, and with your own pace. Tell us something about the lifestyle changes that bhakti demands, or maybe that bhakti requires. The fact that you have to chant 16 rounds, the fact that you have to live a very clean life. You have to get up early, you have to give up on meat, on onion, garlic, and you have to be a very committed, clean man inside out. Talk to us about the transition in your life.
I think this is a very important question, because up until this point, it kind of sounds very inspiring, very uplifting,
Correct.
very empowering. But I think you've kind of shared, on something that is real and something that often I was struggling with. I think the problem is not the regulative principle, it's sometimes how judgmental we can become towards others that are struggling with the principles. So for me, I experienced that a lot. I experienced when it's like, there's certain kind of things I would struggle with. And often I would experience judgment. I would experience and that judgment led to feeling like I failed. I failed in my practice. I failed in my devotional life, and making me even question my relationship with Krishna, making me question my relationship with Guru. So I think it's a very thing, sensitivity is a very important thing. And so in the beginning of my spiritual life, I experienced it to a slight degree, but I think after a while there came a lot of struggles in that. So, Prabhupada always mentions that the regulative principles are there to help us to get to a human stage of life. But if we have lived all of our life in a very sinful way, no meat eating. For me, I used to eat a lot of meat. It's like as growing up in my faith. And then I became a vegetarian by myself before I joined ISKCON, before I joined Krishna consciousness. But no meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication, no illicit sex. These are the very basis of things that our entire world encourages us to do. And it encourages us to do it without any guilt.
Right.
So I think what it is that when we come into Krishna consciousness and then we find that, you have to follow this. Yes, we have to follow it. But of course, we will have a slip. And I had many slips. We will have some slip. But it's really about, like being on the receiving end of compassion rather than judgment. Otherwise it's just like we feel like. So for me, it was hard. Like it was like meat eating wasn't hard. Gambling wasn't hard. Intoxication was very difficult for me because I was very much addicted to drinking and smoking a lot. So that was very difficult. There were times I was living in the temple and I still felt like I want to drink and I want to smoke. But what really helped me in my life was that instead of listening to the voices of every single person around me, I just decided to pick certain people in my life. And it's like, this person's going to be very compassionate. I know he will. Like, he's not going to say it like, oh, carry on doing what you're doing because it's wrong. But the way that they'll deal with it will be a lot more compassionate and encouraging rather than other people. And often I find what it is that people that are judgmental towards others are usually people that are struggling with the same problem themselves. And rather than having to deal with it in their own life, they project it onto others. So yeah, I had a lot of struggles, especially with certain core regulative principles. But at the same time, what kept me going was just having the right people in my life to carry on encouraging me, to carry on supporting me. And when I feel like I failed, that was when they were there for me the most. And so I wear their encouragement, I wear their love, I wear their support like an armor around me right now. And I just keep going.
Right. Mahima ji, thank you so much for being so honest with us. It's honesty is the best policy actually, and the more transparent we are, the more honest we are, the more humble we are, and with humility comes advancement in devotional service. Can you tell us something about the first time you came across a philosophy, or maybe say a concept known as initiation, accepting the formal, agreement, or better say contract with a spiritual master that you will live a certain life for the rest of your life? You have to commit yourself from head to toe to this movement. When was the first time you came to know about this? Also, could you please tell us how long had you been practicing Krishna consciousness for before receiving the formal initiation?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. When I first came, one of the thing I was very hesitant. I haven't mentioned this, but I will mention it now, is because so much of my experience of religion, I've always experienced pressure and a cult-like atmosphere. It's like, yeah, we're part of this and we have to stick to this and we're not allowed to explore anything outside of this. And even till today, honestly speaking, I always say that, if I find a philosophy that matches or that exceeds Krishna consciousness, I'm open to it. My heart is open to it. My mind is open to it. Because ultimately, I want to connect with God. But so far, like this process for me, this Krishna consciousness, really helps me to feel that connection. But I remember that actually when I first came across the whole concept of initiation, I was hesitant. Because what it is that nowadays, religion, spiritual communities, they have become a victim of manipulation, exploitation, control, and power. And what it is that to some degree, I kind of saw that in the past. I've seen people that experience that. For me, I broke free from anything that would tell me that I have to I have to remain within a box. So I was very hesitant. I was actually really hesitant, like, do I really want to take initiation? It's not just something that you take and then you give up when things are not feeling good, when things are not good. This is a lifetime vow and commitment that you're making. So I was really hesitant, I was very doubtful. And I remember actually when it was coming to the time of my initiation, I was like, maybe I should just back away from this. Like, yeah, I want to practice Krishna consciousness, but I don't want to make that level of commitment. No. Especially like, if my hopes, my sort of experiences because of certain things that may happen may get spoiled, then I want to be able to exit out. So I remember thinking all that kind of things. That's when I first heard about initiation, and I thought to myself, this is like, no. But it takes maturity, it takes understanding. So for me, what it was is that even though I had that reluctance, I used to visit my spiritual master a lot, and I used to serve him a lot. Like not give myself, but serve him, and just be reflective along the journey. And then bit by bit, I saw that, this is not someone that looks like they want anything from me. It doesn't seem like they kind of, they want to kind of use me or exploit me. But, there were times I got chastised and I felt like bad. But then there were moments that I was given so much love and encouragement. And, like just when I was about to give up, my spiritual master knew exactly what he needed to say to bring me up again. So he knew what to do to humble me, but he also knew what to do to uplift me. And then that's when I realized that actually this is not just an ordinary spiritual teacher like I met in the past. This is someone who truly, really has nothing to do with this world. But their purpose is just that they just want to be, especially like, he is like in his 70s. So for me, it's just like, like when you come to that stage, you really want to manipulate your power, your influence as much as you can. But I didn't sense from that. And then so therefore, that voice was there. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't take initiation. Don't take initiation. Don't take initiation. But I was just like, okay, just do it. I've already come this far. I've been through so much in my life, my journey, and I know I need a guide, and I know I need a guru, and just go for it, and go for it with optimism. Go for it with hope, and go with it with like, we're very skeptic nowadays in the world that we live in today, and that's why even if the truth is right in front of us, we choose to ignore it because of our skepticism. But I just went for it, and I'm grateful that I did.
Right.
Of course, it's not all easy. Even after initiation, it comes with its challenges, it comes with its difficulties. You know this, many of our viewers know this, I know this. There's been many challenges, but hard times create strong people, not just strong physically, but strong also spiritually.
Wonderful. So we are towards the end of the discussion here, and uh, we have a panel where the audience posts their questions, and I see that there are a certain questions for you. And if they are in Hindi, I'm going to first read it in Hindi, and let's see how much of it are you able to understand,
Okay.
and then I will translate it in English. So, Prabhuji, tell us something about the preaching activities that you have been doing so far, and the outreach programs and the various things that you have been doing personally to propagate Krishna consciousness. And how was the first experience when you just entered the field with the mission to spread the word of God?
Um, yeah, let's start off with that. When I first started Sankirtan, I had a little bit of experience of selling on the street. You know, I used to work with what was called on behalf of UNICEF. So there was an organization that was working on behalf of UNICEF. So we had to go out there on the street and we had to earn a certain amount of donation from people. So then therefore we can help starving children. So I had some level of experience. I remember my boss, my manager said to me that if you don't make this certain amount of sales, then we're going to fire you. And that for me was just enough drive to be like, okay, I need to get out of my comfort zone. But for me, it's like Sankirtan was so different. And I think when people ask me, like when I first started Sankirtan, it was really uncomfortable. It's like here I am carrying books, and I'm a very I can be outgoing, but I can also be shy when it comes to being on the street and trying to kind of break that barrier to talking to people. So I was a bit nervous, I was shy, but I was also determined. And with the help of devotees, again, I picked it up very quickly. And now I love Sankirtan. I think it's just one of the best service. Every service is the best, but Sankirtan for me, I just love it so much. But one thing that I kind of noticed is that, like as I was on Sankirtan, I was coming across so many people that were just trying to get very argumentative with me, debative, and it's just like my religion is the right religion, my way is the right way. So my Sankirtan then kind of gradually evolved into doing corporate preaching, corporate outreach preaching. So I would go into, with the School of Bhakti, I would go to different organizations and companies, and then I would try and share Bhakti. But I'll just be open and I'll be honest, I still wasn't satisfied. Because what would happen was, going to so many of these places, it was almost like I had to kind of filter the philosophy down into like yoga, mindfulness, meditation, trying to speak a language that corporate companies, like they could understand and they could connect with. And I just felt like I need to do a little bit more than this. And then that's where the inspiration came, especially with the conflict and violence, as I was telling you, that's going on in the world. That's when my enthusiasm and my interest for interfaith really developed. Because in an interfaith atmosphere, you don't have to water down anything. You can really and truly, or you don't have to like as they say, a bridge preach. You don't have to do that. You can really and truly speak from the heart of what Srila Prabhupada, and I think that's one thing that really inspires me about Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, when they told him like, oh, why don't you eat from a fork and a knife? Why don't you dress like everyone else is dressing? He's like, no, I'm not here for them to give me something. I'm here to share something with the world. And so he was very bold, and
Right.
he was very unapologetic, and he did not compromise anything. And so for me, I just felt like interfaith dialogue and atmosphere is that space where I can sit down and I can share that this is what Krishna consciousness is about, and this is what your faith is about. And we can clearly understand that, like, yeah, there are some slight differences, but now let's sit down more and let's talk about, where the puzzles fit. Because as we understand, Krishna has come in different yugas to spread his glory according to different people, different understandings, and different levels. So therefore, who are we to say that, this person is bad, this person's good, this person's right, this person's wrong? We should try and be a lot more encouraging. And so part of my drive, part of my seva. It's only at the beginning journey, but part of my inspiration now is that how can we build a global worldwide network where we can do more of this kind of project, where we sit down face to face with different leaders, faith leaders, and we talk. And then this can be shared with the whole world. It can be shared with people, and then they can see it for themselves that, all this time we've been fighting, we've been like so much violence, conflict, division over the same thing that we're talking about it, but in a different language, different description, different process, different rituals. So I'm very much inspired by that. I feel like this is a field that there is some work that's happening, but there's not a lot of work that's happening. We go out on book distribution, which is important. We do a lot of corporate preaching, which is also important. But there needs to be pioneers. There needs to be ambassadors when it comes to going out there and doing more of this kind of project and service also. And I feel like there are, but we need more. Because, I'll tell you one story. Once what would happen was there was a Sankirtan devotee. And this Sankirtan devotee tried to stop a Muslim and talk to the Muslim about the Bhagavad Gita. And then the Muslim said, no, my religion doesn't allow me to read this. I'm not interested. And then the Sankirtan devotee asked him, what religion are you from? And then the Muslim said, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Muslim and I believe in the Quran. And then this devotee said, oh, that's amazing. I've studied the Quran. I really appreciate the Quran. It's really nice what it preaches. And then the Muslim was like, what? Like, you took the time to study my religion, to study my book? Okay, let me take the Bhagavad Gita. I will study your book now. So when people see that we're interested in them, they also take interest in us. But if all we're trying to do is establish ourselves as the supreme, then people will not be interested in them.
That's right. So there has to be a certain brotherhood in the society. There has to be a certain interest. We have to be curious about what's going on in and around. And that has to be with a feeling of mutual respect and acceptance. I'll be very honest, this sort of vision has to be widely accepted, and this is the need of the hour. You rightly mentioned about the condition of the UAE right now and the ongoing conflict right now, the restlessness and the unrest. And somewhere or the other, the root cause for all of this is trying to prove oneself as more superior than the other. Can you tell us about your first experience in Mayapur? And when was the first time you came to know about a place in India that is called Mayapur? And when you came to India, what were the the few cultural shocks that you encountered?
When I first came to Mayapur, it was about, I don't know if I couldn't remember, like last year or 2 years. No, it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And the first time I came to Mayapur, I was just there for a month. I was there to serve my spiritual master. So I wasn't very attentive. I was just like, the thing is, I'm the type of person that when I'm focused on something, I don't notice anything else. I just focus on that thing. So that was like 2 years ago when I first came to Mayapur. But then, as you were mentioning at the introduction, that then I came back to Mayapur again last year of October, and I was there for 6 months. And I must honestly, I think the biggest shock for me was just the population. There was so many people. And some days I love it because you just see so much diversity. Other days you're just like, this is too much. I need to get away from this. So that was like one of the biggest shock. I'm someone who kind of loves or likes some bit of space. So when that space isn't there, I get paranoid a little bit. I'm like, okay, what's going on? That was like the first shock. But at the same time, I must honestly confess, when I came to Mayapur, I actually felt like, especially last year, I felt like I was returning home. One thing that I had a lot when I was in Mayapur is deja vu. Not just last year, but also even 2 years ago when I came to visit my spiritual master. I felt like, as I was in the Jalangi, I felt like, oh my God, I've been here before. As I was in the Ganga, I felt like, oh my God, this place looks familiar. I was experiencing a lot of deja vu when I was in Mayapur. And honestly, although I would say that just so many people being there was a shock, but it was also a very beautiful sight. Because what it is that I just felt like I was receiving so much love from everyone. Even if they weren't speaking to me and I wasn't speaking to them, I could appreciate their devotional, like I could appreciate their bhakti. That, okay, they may not be dressed in dhotis and kurtas, and some of them may not have to, but they have this unmistakable attraction and love for Radha Madhav. And I just felt like, and what had happened was, as I was with them, I felt like their love for Radha Madhav was pouring into me. And I felt like, oh my God, like this is so beautiful. So I felt like a huge spiritual boost when I was in Mayapur. And then just the beauty of it was being able to go to the Vaishnav Samadhi. Every day I would go there and I would just chant my japa there. And I would kind of really try and connect with these gurus, to Bhakti Tirtha Swami, Tamal Krishna Goswami, Govinda Swami. I took a huge, I felt a huge attraction and pull also to Govinda Swami while I was there. I met a couple of his disciples. So every day I would go, Bhakti Tirtha Swami, every day I would go, I'd just sit and I would chant in front of them. I would try and do 1 or 2 rounds in front of each Samadhi. And it was just so beautiful. It was so amazing. And I felt like a genuine spiritual shield. And then actually, one devotee I met there was saying that as Kali Yuga progresses and things get worse, the Shakti, the protection of Sridhar Mayapur also grows stronger and stronger and stronger. So I pray that I can return back to the Dham and I can serve from there and carry on the mission and the mood of Srila Prabhupada. Actually, also going to the TOVP, going to Srila Prabhupada's Legacy Museum was also very special.
So I have a last few questions in my mind. So the first time you visited Mayapur was because you had to serve your spiritual master. And the second time you spent 6 whole months there. And that means you spent the winters there. So can you tell us what did you do in all these 6 months? Did you learn something? Had you gone there for a course?
I was studying Bhakti Shastri, Mayapur Institute. And the winter was very heavy, but also it was very purifying.
Right.
I think also it's like the first few days I remember during the winter time when I would wake up from Mangalarti. I don't know. I just felt it was really purifying. It's so easy to go. It's so easy to go to Mangalarti when everything is easy. It's so easy, especially like I was bathing in cold shower, showering in cold shower. So it's so easy to go to Mangalarti. It's so easy to be spiritual when Krishna makes all the arrangements for you in your life. But when it's a cold shower, a cold morning, dark, there's no lights, so you have to use your phone. Some days there's no scooter, mosquitoes biting you, snakes, and you're just like, that's when you really know that you're actually going to Mangalarti out of love and not just out of convenience. So for me, it was like the winter was purifying. The rain was beautiful. I love rain a lot. For me, my ideal experience is when it's nice and warm and it's raining at the same time. So the rain was really nice and beautiful. But yeah, it was very testing times for me during winter because I felt like my spiritual life was really being pushed. And it was no longer doing things out of convenience, but doing things out of, even though it was inconvenient, remembering why I was doing what I was doing. And I think that's one thing that my mentor always tells me, that it's so easy to focus on the how and the what, but actually it's when challenging times forces us to think about the why. Why am I doing this? Why am I waking up early in the morning? Why am I walking in the cold weather just to, to go to Mangalarti? Why am I walking in, the why is so important. So I really truly feel like as I was there in Mayapur, my why was being refined more and more and more. But also it was challenging. I'm not going to say it was easy. I spent a lot of time on my, during Bhakti Shastri, it was easy to be more spiritual because I was with the community. But then when I wasn't doing Bhakti Shastri or outside of class times, it was difficult because I was trying to make connections and network, but it wasn't so easy. Mayapur was a big place. Sometimes I personally felt like it was difficult to make friends very quickly. So also I went through so much struggles, but I would say ultimately at the end of my trip, I really feel like my why was refined. My determination was really carved. And yes, till this day, there's still struggles, but I haven't given up on Krishna consciousness. And that's the most important thing.
Right. So, Mahima Varnaji, we really pray to Lord that you continue to serve Him, serve your spiritual master the same way you have been doing so far. And if you have been given the chance, if you had been given the chance to meet your younger self one time, what advice would you give him and why?
Um, the advice that I would give to my younger self is don't isolate yourself. I think one thing that I used to do a lot when I was younger was I used to isolate myself. And so therefore I became very prone to depression, to suicidal thoughts. And so I would actually tell my younger self that don't isolate yourself. There is a community that loves you, that cares for you, that wants what's best for you. And Krishna is ultimately guiding you towards that community. But just learn to be honest and learn to reach out, but reach out to the right people. And that's something that I'm doing today that I wasn't so good at doing then.
I think the Lord is very proud of you. I think Srila Prabhupada is very happy that you finally joined his army as an active soldier. I would like to conclude this interview, at least conclude my questions with this last question. What is your vision in regards to your service, in regards to your contribution to society, and in regards to your existence?
So I think I've kind of touched on it throughout this conversation. I would want more people to know about bhakti, about Krishna consciousness. And I would want people to realize that actually Krishna consciousness is not a conversion faith. The, you know, because that's something that people are very reluctant nowadays in the world. Nobody wants to feel converted and nobody wants to be converted. But Prabhupada gave us a very beautiful understanding that Krishna consciousness can be practiced by anyone of any creed, religion, background, gender. That it's not that you have to change your label, you have to change your title, you have to change your process. I really truly believe if we could live in a world where people could really cry for God, that could really cry and could really chant God's name with purity and sincerity, we would live in a better world. So my vision, my mission, my purpose, my being like when I came to Krishna consciousness, I was very sort of embarrassed of my faith, the faith that I came from. Because what it is that there's always that culture, like it hasn't always been easy between Hindus and Muslims in the world. And that often sometimes feels like it even creeps into the Krishna consciousness society, where sometimes our sort of cultural side takes over. And then we become like very emotionally moved by what's going on in the world. And for right reasons, of course. I cannot say that we should disregard that. But what it is that often I would become like the receiving end of that. And so I used to be very sort of shy, very embarrassed, very nervous. But I kind of outgrew from that. And so that kind of part carved a path for me where I realized that actually, this is a part of who I like my journey. This is a part of my story. And yeah, so if I could just dedicate my existence and my life to creating that kind of environment and that space where we can just call out for God's name with purity and with sincerity, whoever we are and whatever we may believe in, then we can work together to create a more of a spiritual reality around us. And it's not to say, Krishna, that this Kali Yuga, this world we're living in today, there'll always be hypocrisy and quarrel. I'm not saying that we'll be able to create a perfect nirvana at this current stage. There'll always be conflict, war, violence. It's just the nature of this material world. But if enough people can come together with that desire for cooperation, for understanding, for mutual respect, as you were sharing, where we can encourage each other and uplift each other. And that is enough. That is sufficient. We're not here trying to say we're going to change the whole world. The world will eventually change, but there's still time to come for that. But at least if we can do our part, that would be wonderful. And so that's my dedication for Srila Prabhupada. That's my commitment to Srila Prabhupada. Creating in a world where we can truly really encourage God consciousness and not try and like focus on like you have to have this label, you have to have this title, you have to do things this way.
That's right. Mahimarnava ji, we have one question for you. Let me just put it on the screen. Rohini Pranaji is asking you, how do you remember Krishna, especially in this materialistic place?
That's a very beautiful question, and thank you so much for asking this question. I think what it is that it's just like I was sharing, having a good community, having a good spiritual circle. That's one thing that helps. But you see, one of the things that I'm really grateful for in my life was even growing up as a Muslim, I used to go a lot to funerals. I used to visit funeral sites a lot as a kid. You see, when we live in the world, it's so easy to forget where we're all actually headed. You know, we get so caught up in, you know, our responsibilities, our duties. We get caught up in so much labels. But when we go to a funeral site or crematorium site, we realize that we're not going to take any of it with us. We're not going to take, you know, Prabhupada calls it, it's just an ocean of names. You know, there has been people before us, there are people now, and there will be people after us. And no matter how much we say that, you know, I'm going to remember this person or people will remember me, eventually we'll become forgotten. And so for me, it's like from time to time, it may sound depressing, but I like to sit with myself and I like to remind myself that this world I'm living in, this body that I'm residing in, is not temporary, it's not permanent. When I was in Mayapur, I had this very close friend, very dear friend, someone I really appreciated. And I was looking forward to returning back to the UK and catching up with him and connecting with him. And then one night, one midnight, you know, in Mayapur, one devotee messaged me and said to me that, "Did you hear the news?" And then I asked her, "What do you mean?" "This person passed away." And I was like, "What?" You know, it's like, how? Like, you know, he seemed like the most fit person. He seemed like the most healthiest person. How did he pass away? And so it's a reality. And what it is that death seems to be these things that we forget about. It just becomes like the background noise of our life. We focus on responsibilities, duties, you know, chores, this, that. And then what it is that we only think about death when we're about to face it, or when we're close to it, when we're in old age. But then Prabhupada says that actually each and every one of us, we don't know when we're going to die. So every one of us are old. So I like to remind, and I think it might sound like a very depressing thing to do, but it can also be, it could be a good reminder that when we meditate upon the impermanence of this body and our situations and circumstances, then what it is that it kind of brings us back to reality. That yes, I'm in this world, I should perform my dharma, my duty, my responsibility, my chores, but at the same time, let me not forget about the long-term vision, the eternality of my journey that I'm on. This is just one chapter. This is not the entire book. So I like to do that, and I would recommend that. Meditate, you know, take time to really reflect on, you know, your futility. You think you're strong, you think you're powerful, you think you're beautiful, you think you're all this, but these are all factors of things that eventually one day we will have to leave behind.
Right. Prabhuji, it had been a wonderful experience talking to you. Thank you so much for joining with us today, for sharing so many important details about your life. Thank you so much for being so honest. We honestly pray to the Lord that He showers His blessings on you all the time. And we pray that you are able to propagate as many people, bring them closer to Krishna consciousness. And may you live a long and healthy life. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much. You've been wonderful. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. दर्शकों, उम्मीद करती हूँ आप सभी को आज का ये सेशन पसंद आया होगा। अगर आप में से ऐसा कोई व्यक्ति है जो इस सेशन को बहुत ध्यान से नहीं समझ पाया है, तो कृपया करके आप इस सेशन को किसी ऐसे व्यक्ति तक पहुंचाइए जो आपको ये सेशन अच्छे से समझाए, क्योंकि आज हमारे जो गेस्ट हैं वे अपने आप में बहुत ही ज्यादा पावरफुल, बहुत ही ज्यादा ईमानदार और कहीं ना कहीं बहुत ही ज्यादा नेक दिल व्यक्ति हैं। अगर आप उनकी बातों को समझ जाते हैं तो आपके लिए कृष्णा कॉन्शियसनेस को समझ जाना और श्रील प्रभुपाद के सैक्रिफाइसेस की वैल्यू आपको आराम से पता चल जाएगी। आप सभी का धन्यवाद कि आपने अपना कीमती संडे, अपना वीकेंड हमारे साथ बिताया है। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। बने रहिए हरे कृष्णा टीवी के साथ।